Welcome to our next short reading and even shorter reflection for Wednesday, the 13th of January. I hope this does find you well. So, our reading from the Bible this morning, taken from Mark chapter 1, verses 29 to 39. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. That evening, after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all who were ill and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so that I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So he travelled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. The reading set forth today places us right at the beginning of Mark's Gospel. What we find in these opening verses is Mark showing how different and amazing Jesus is. We hear several times in those first verses, although not in these verses, just how amazed the people were with Jesus. Amazement. There is an urgency in this opening chapter, with words such as "at once" or "without delay." In the passage we hear why Jesus came, so he could preach. "Let us go," he says, to tell people about who he is. And he backs up his talk with the walk, bringing healing, wholeness, and hope to people. So much so that people were looking for Jesus, actively searching him out. Here we see the personal Jesus, more of a global Jesus, and a very clear on what his purpose is, Jesus. He steps into the friendship and relationship with his disciples and brings healing and wholeness to Peter's mother-in-law, who then gets up and waits on them. There is something very personal, intimate, that we can see here. This is not a distant God who is not approachable. It is God who intimately deals with the hopes and fears us individuals carry. Yet we do see a more global Jesus too. Jesus heals person after person, and you don't get the feeling of such close intimacy. There is a sense that Jesus' work is on a far wider scale than simply bringing healing and wholeness to mother-in-laws. And Jesus knew what he was about. He came with purpose to reconcile creation to his Father's will, which he sought to demonstrate by bringing healing and wholeness to many, and to also tell people about this. In normal times, we may simply go, "Yeah, isn't that good? Even mother-in-laws are healed." But we are not in normal times, and there is a lot of fear around. How may this reading bring comfort and purpose to us today? It is simply too glib a comment to simply say that Jesus brings healing and wholeness to all when so many are suffering and dying at the moment. The issue of suffering is such a challenging one, isn't it? Yet Jesus has stepped into creation, which is full of suffering. And we clearly do not experience Jesus today as those in his day did. He is not physically here. But we can note that Jesus did step into creation, full of suffering, and brought healing. In other words, Jesus does bring hope of healing and wholeness, if not at the present moment, then certainly as we journey towards eternity. Prayer is a central theme of this reading too. That conversation between Father and Son is key. It resourced and empowered Jesus. Yes, prayer in these times can be challenging, yet it can also be a source of comfort and empowerment to us too. How are you finding your own prayer language at this time? Keep going. Be honest with God, with how you feel. Keep going with that conversation between you and Him. Elsewhere, Jesus does tell us to pray for those who are sick. And so we must keep that going and doing that even now, perhaps more so now. We need to pray that people will still encounter the hope that Jesus offers today. There is an urgency to the beginning of Mark's Gospel. He wants to make the point that stuff needs doing. That urgency to us is still there, to hold our community in prayer for healing and wholeness, to pray that hope can be seen and experienced. It should also be with the awareness that suffering is a very personal thing. Again, hold that image in your mind. Jesus stood next to the bed of Peter's mother-in-law. May we not lose sight that Jesus does stand by us when we too suffer. That is not a glib platitude. It is meant as a statement of hope. I find this reading both exciting and challenging. Exciting because there is such energy and hope in it, in what Jesus is doing. Yet it is so challenging to read and wrestle with in this day. With these verses, there is so much suffering, and there's also so much suffering in the world around us. Maybe part of the church's task is simply to pray, and to prayerfully bring the hope of this Bible episode to bear on the situation we all face at the moment. And should we do that, may it bring hope not just to ourselves, but also hope to the people we may pray for too.